People who use Wikipedia as a primary source of information because they're intellectually lazy and stupid. And gentlemen, this is going to be a response to OtherDudeProductions. My friends Jeremy Oyer and Cortev Larry refer to him as Other Dumb, which is also appropriate because he is pretty dumb. And I'm going to go over our first topic before we get to the main event, which will be gun control in this one. And I'm going to do several videos on this moron because I've got dozens of screenshots of his stupidity, and I've usually got my cursor right on his name so you can see at the bottom of the screenshot his the URL to his channel. Before we get to the issue of gun control, here's the opening statement. This, I didn't record when the date was when this happened. It was roughly a year ago. First comment he ever left on my channel. Newsflash, Romney will not invite RuPaul into his cult. He will choose Bachman. She will be VP and second lady at the same time. Miss Marcus can be third lady. And then he starts talking about Higgerned. I asked him what he meant about that, and he didn't. And then he starts talking about then they'll reconcile at their convention. So he's trying to play the race card there and make me there. I don't know what he's talking about. And he says amen and argh. And gosh darn it, I just love choking on them meat sticks. So that was his opening comment on my channel. Kind of odd, especially for an adult male. He seems, this guy, I don't think he's playing with a full deck. But here's what he wrote on his channel. I took a screenshot. Open forum for, and in caps, civil discussion and debate. So look at what he wrote on my channel as his opening comment. And then he says civil discussion and debate. So does this sound like civil discussion? I don't. If you hear noise out there, it's raining here and hailing very hard, pretty hard. So if you hear that, just ignore it. So if you look at what he said, it appears right off the bat that this guy is not quite playing with a full deck. I just wanted to put that out there. That was his opening comment on my channel roughly 1 year ago. Now I'm going to get to Other Dumb's comments concerning gun control, and one issue that will dovetail with this is the war on drugs. And I believe if ending, and he would probably agree, this moron would agree as well, he is like a broken clock, right, twice a day. I firmly believe ending the war on drugs would abate the violent crime problem, if you want to call it a problem now, since it's declined massively over the last 20 years. We'll get to that. But I believe ending the war on drugs would help lower our crime rate. So right there's a comment. He says, never thought I'd agree with Kook about anything, but she, he, and he's saying that because he's angry. He knows I'm a he, but he's angry that I call some of his friends on YouTube women because, well, they are. So he's angry, but ignore the comments about Zimmerman, which you were wrong on, by the way. That will be for another video, so ignore any comments that don't have anything to do with the topic. So right there, he agrees with me in ending the war on drugs. And then here's another comment, and he goes, common sense laws do work. And you'll notice how eventually he gets his rhetoric, he ratchets up his rhetoric, he gets angry, he starts pounding the table, he starts throwing a fit. This screenshot was saved. The previous one, where he agreed with me on the war on drugs, that was from July 26th, 2012. This one is from December 30th, 2012 on my channel. He says, common sense laws do work. Citizens in Japan, Germany, the UK, Sweden, and Canada are far less likely to die from gun-related homicides than in the U.S. In 2009, Americans were 7.5 times more likely to die from gun-related homicide than Canadians. Are we 7.5 times more evil? 7.5 times more insane? Well, maybe certain demographics are. Other dupe. We'll get to that later, and he will be rather upset. Why aren't you asking, for example, why don't you ask, are blacks 8 times more violent than whites? Why don't you ask that question? Another thing I need to mention before we go further, just so I can get it out there now. If the homicide rate in the U.S. continues to fall at the rate it's fallen the last 20 years, let's say over the next decade continues to fall, but the percentage and then we'll get to that too, the percentage of gun-related homicides that were connected to a firearm has been about steady, has been basically flat over about the last decade. So if the homicide rate overall went down, but the percentage of homicides you committed with a gun went up, would that be bad? Would you consider that bad? Because dead is dead, whether you're getting shanked, hit in the head with a crowbar, run over with a car, strangled, poisoned, or shot with a handgun, or an assault rifle. It doesn't matter. Dead is dead. So I need to say that too, because he's just concentrating on gun-related homicide. He mentions that specifically a lot, and doesn't go over the violent crime and homicide rate overall. So, and another thing Other Dupe will do a lot of, he throws a lot of stuff at you quick, and he is a Wikipedia copier, which I will get to in other videos. He copies word for word off of obscure, wacko websites that tell him what he wants to hear, and he uses generalized statements, and he has a lot of free time, so he'll hit your channel a lot, boom, 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 and try to frustrate you. But that's why I saved his comments, so he won't be able to engage in any revisionism. So he got that comment, and then he says, many of your points actually demonstrate why we need more restrictions and regulations. 60% of incident homicides involve a firearm. More guns than ever are manufactured and imported here. True. All studies. Now, here, that's an example. All studies. All the studies that he got off of Wikipedia or from the Violence Policy Center or from the American Center for Regress. All the studies they focused on show that more guns equal more gun violence. And as I will get to, again, I will belabor the point, as I will get to shortly, even if I did believe that, or even if correlation does equal causation, you actually undercut yourself. You and your family are at far greater risk of dying by gunfire if you're an inexperienced person. I mean, like most Democrats, I mean, gunfire, if you keep a gun in your home, guns kept in a home for self-protection are more often used to kill somebody. Where's he getting this from? He never says. 22 times more likely. Of course, 40% of intimate homicides, the person doesn't need a gun. They stab them, they shank them, they hit them over the head with a ball bat. So it's not going too good for Other Dupe so far. And then he says, no answer. Actually, I did refute him. Americans are not 60 times more evil, and they're not 60 times more insane than Germans. We are 60 times dumber. Maybe you are. I mean, you have voted for Obama twice. You can't be too bright. Thanks to kooks like you, Black and Stinky, whoever that is. He does mention Oyer. He's angry at Oyer. If Canadians or Germans were 2 or 3 times safer from gun homicide than us, then your comparison to violent countries like Mexico and Brazil with an S, would be valid. But they are 30 times and 60 times safer, respectively. Rape and assault are grievous, but are not relevant to this discussion. I was talking to him about defensive gun uses and the fact that rape and violent crime has declined and markedly over the last 20 years, and he tried to throw that under the rug. And notice he's still talking about common sense gun control legislation, which means undermining the Second Amendment without actually repealing it, as you'll get to, or as I'll get to, excuse me. Here's the next comment from the moron. I endured your video, pretty much a transcript of your comments. How long did it take you to find the pathetic Virginia data, which only indicates that a correlation conclusion? Well, I don't think he means correlation causation, but this idiot, I think he's confused. It was difficult to conclude. That's your big proof that more guns equals less violence. Actually, I will get to it. And then he tries to bring Zimmerman into it. Tries to drag Zimmerman in there. I didn't go there. And as in my notes, in Virginia there are a lot more guns but less violent crime. Whoops. Who said I was stumping for a neighborhood watch program ignores black on black crime? He doesn't say that because that would totally undermine him. He said I never made a claim. I was mocking his 60 times more likely, 22 times more likely. As I will get into the details of this, he's completely wrong. I never made a claim that you are 138,765 times more likely to die from gun-related homicide if you own a firearm in the home. If you have this actual screenshot, please prove it. I will again concede. And then we got some other stuff. He's all over the map. What I do remember claiming is the fact that owning a gun in your home, we'll go over those studies, makes you and your family members 22 times more likely to die from gun-related homicide than homes without guns. Do I got it right, Other Dupe? Doing a good rendition of your whining. maybe, just maybe, this is why we have a higher gun-related homicide than any other developed country in the world. Really? What about crime overall? That goes back to my question. If the homicide rate en masse fell by 50% over the next 20 years, theoretically, but the percentage of homicides with a gun increased by 10%, would that be a bad thing? Because, like I said, dead is dead, whether you're getting shanked, crowbarred, choked to death, or shot. More guns equals more violence. Dang it. Dang it, I'm going to pound the table here. Dang it, dang it, dang it. It means more guns equals more violence. I'll say it again if I have to. I'll pound the table. This idiot repeats this over. Having a gun in the home, for example, makes you 22 times. He's on autopilot here. These are his talking points that he gets off of Wikipedia and off wacko websites. Next comment. I provided evidence on the Journal of Trauma and the American Academy of Pediatrics, which prove if you have a gun in the home, you're going to die. I could have cited a lot more sources without really trying. Google is what he does. Are you going to use the NRA data? And of course he played the NRA card because he wants to use the "you're biased." And when he sees this video, him and the hippie from California, that hippie over there that doesn't brush his teeth, they'll be playing the boring card. You're boring. You got facts. You get into details. You couldn't sum it up in 3 minutes. You're boring. So that's why he was doing the NRA thing. He wants to play the your bias card. A Philadelphia study found that the odds of an assault victim being shot were 4.5 times greater if he carried a gun. Do you know why maybe this person was carrying a gun? Do you ever maybe take that into account? In Japan, and he brings up Japan. I won't focus on Japan when I'm going over other nations' data, but I will focus on entities like Sweden, Finland, Switzerland, Norway, Russia, Brazil, Estonia, Mexico, and a few others, including the number of guns that are estimated among the civilian population there. We've settled this issue once and for all, dang it. We've settled it. Ignore the comments that about McStupid that had nothing to do with it. That will be in a video later. Here he's, I'm sorry I didn't tell you when these comments were. I saved screenshots. Most of those were back in either February or March of 2013. You should be able to see it in the lower right-hand corner of your screen if you go full screen. And this next one, February 17, 2013. This was on the Hot Dog Well channel. He posted this on the Hot Dog Well channel. I wish I could be happy about common sense gun controls finally being on the table, but I'm still so sad for these families. It's impossible to rejoice. Common sense laws do work. Citizens of Japan, UK, Sweden, and Canada are far less likely to die from gun-related homicides than in the U.S. In 2009, Americans were 7.5 times more likely to die from gun-related homicide than Canadians. If we're going to separate Americans and Canadians, how about whites and blacks? Why don't you do that? He says, common sense restrictions on assault weapons. I've gone over this in my videos before. Most gun-related homicides, it's a handgun. Not somebody with a Bushmaster, not somebody with an AR-15, it's a handgun. So, and he did not know the Clinton era ban was only on cosmetic features. Like if you added a pistol grip and a barrel shroud to a rifle, all of a sudden it became an assault rifle. Ooh, super scary. So he doesn't know anything. Old fart didn't know what an assault weapon was either. He thought it was some big automatic weapon with a big old scary clip on it. Big old scary magazine, I should say. This next comment, April 28th, 2013, I saved this. This is on this another one of his retarded friends, Sunnyside 2000. And this guy is also, I think, brain dead. Now, this is where OtherDude's getting angry. He's lost. He's been hammered on gun control so many times. And now he's going over to his friends in his bully pulpit. He's going over there to get pumped up and get patted on the back with spring-loaded elbows and have his friends who never actually call him out if they believe he's wrong, which is why he's so unprepared. And he's getting mad. For the record, I am against the Second Amendment. It's no longer common sense gun control. As I talked for months and months about. Now I'm against the Second Amendment. It is outdated, needs to be re-examined. Do you even know how to amend the Constitution? By the way, too, I will not comply with the repeal of the Second Amendment. I will not comply. We no longer need armed militias to protect us from the government. Really? I thought Bush was spying on everybody. Huh. We need common sense gun legislation. Well, so then he goes back to this. We need common sense gun legislation to protect us from these psychos who belong to the militias. Actually, this begs the question. Are blacks 8 times more evil than whites going by FBI homicide statistics? Just wondering, little fella. So who is it that's doing the murder? And then here he goes again. He's repeating the same stuff over and over. This guy has a lot of free time. So that concludes it. Now we'll get to, I'm going to get to surgically dissecting and destroying his stupidity, but I wanted to go over all those gun control comments that the little man put out there. Show that he's an idiot. This guy is not playing with a full deck. Let's begin. Okay, folks, just bear with me here. I've got a lot of data to go over. I don't do generalized videos like these other morons do. It takes a while to dig into the details. People write books about these subjects, and you got morons, hippies, and idiots like OtherDupe who can sum up everything in 7 or 8 minutes. That's because they're idiots. First of all, let's go over the trends in U.S. crime. One thing we'll see is there are a lot more guns now in the U.S. than there were 40, 50 years ago, or even 20 years ago. A lot more guns. So let's see if his more guns, he'll say more gun crime, but when you factor in all the defensive gun uses, well, and even though the homicide rate has been falling, the number of homicides related to firearms has stayed steady, but those would also be falling then. If you look at the firearm homicides from 1993 to 2011, the rate per 100,000 persons, well, OtherDupe, it's been almost cut in half, roughly. From 1993 to 2011, you can see a big slope, from the early 90s all the way to 2000. Then it kind of levels off and then begins going down over the last few years again. So firearm homicides, the nominal rate or the nominal amount and the rate has gone down considerably since the early 90s. Firearm-related homicides declined 39% from 18,253 in 1993 to 11,101 in 2011. And then that means that's just a nominal number. The rate, has crashed. Non-fatal firearm crimes declined 69% from 1.5 million victimizations in 1993 to 467,300 in 2011. About 70 to 80% of firearm homicides and 90% of non-fatal firearm victimizations were committed with a handgun, stupid, not an assault weapon. Are you listening, dumbass? From 1993 to 2010, males, blacks, and persons aged 18 to 24 had the highest rates of firearm homicide. Are you listening, stupid? Do you see that? Young black males disproportionately are victims of homicide and commit homicide, according to FBI statistics. In 2004, among state prison inmates who possessed a gun at the time of offense, less than 2% bought their firearm at a flea market or gun show. Uh-oh, bad news for you there. And 40% obtained their firearm from an illegal source. Oh, wow. So I guess making a gun control, they don't give a damn about the laws. Then we got non-fatal firearm victimizations. The rate per 1,000 has crashed. Whoops. Criminal firearm violence, you've got all violence involving firearms. This is from 1993 to 2011. All firearm violence, that was homicide from 1993 to 2011. From 1993 to 2001, the average all violence involving firearms was 7.78%. From 2002 to 2011, the average is now 7.38%. So we've seen a little bit of a decline there. Not much, but a little. All firearm violence, that was homicide from 1993 to 2001. Averaged 1.4% of all firearm violence was homicide. From 2002 to 2011, the average was 2.45%. So we see a major increase there as the homicide rate has gone down. So we've got less firearm violence, but a higher percentage of it, it turns out to be homicide, and that could be a whole bunch of factors there. Rather than just looking at the trajectory of, well, we got more guns with people, that means we're going to have more violence. Not necessarily. There's all kinds of socioeconomic factors. Heck, maybe they're just a bad shot. Firearm homicides by race, 1993 to 2010. Well, even the black rate for blacks was well over 25 per 1,000 persons until about 1995. It started a steep decline, and then it rose again, and now it's kind of leveled off to where it was in the late 90s and early aughts. But you see how much higher it is than whites? Why don't you say that? You keep asking if Americans are 8 or 7.5 times more violent than Canadians and Germans. Well, why don't you ask this question? Oh, well, I guess that doesn't fit your template, does it? Non-fatal firearm violence by race and Hispanic origin. That's actually, they're all pretty much, they're getting really close together. You can see how blacks were way ahead. So we've made a lot of inroads there. More guns in the hands of black people, law-abiding black people, has actually probably protected a lot of them. So you see how it was over 16 per 1,000 in the early mid-90s. And it has crashed since then. And the number of guns in the U.S., as we'll get to shortly, has not gone down, dummy. So look at that. Homicide victimization rates. I went over that in my Enough is Enough response to Old Fart Grunts video. Look at how more guns. If correlation equals causation, as you say, more guns does equal less crime. Look at that. Blacks were disproportionately represented as both homicide victims and offenders. The victimization rate for blacks was 6 times higher than the rate for whites. The offending rate for blacks was almost 8 times higher than the rate for whites. Look at that, dummy. You see that, other dupe? I'm not politically correct. And then you got victims and offenders by demographic group. Basically, what we got here, other dupe, if you can wrap your head around this, we've got a segment of the population that is from 1980 to 2008 averaged about 1/8 of the population. 1/8. Yet they were committing over half the homicides. You see how that skews the rate? That's just the average from 1980 to 2008. And you've seen the homicide rate spike in the early 80s, late 80s, and early 90s. So the rate for whites is actually lower. That's just the average there is 4.5. Well, I guess you're not going to like that, are you, little fella? And then we've got the FBI. I've been over this before as well. Uniform crime reports, how the violent crime rate and murder and non-negligent manslaughter rate was very high in the early 90s, and then it crashed. In fact, the murder rate has almost been cut in half since the early 90s. And just in the last 10 years, the violent crime rate has, per 100,000, violent crime rate has fallen almost 22%. Murder and non-negligent manslaughter rate has fallen 16.8%. And in that time, there's a lot more guns. Justifiable homicides. There's about, around 600 justifiable homicides every year, either committed or done by a police officer or a private citizen while someone else is in the process of committing a felony. Maybe they're trying to rape someone, they're trying to kill somebody, and then they get off. That's called a justifiable homicide. Plenty of those, and I think justifiable homicides are great. This next screenshot, percentage of homicides attributable to a firearm. I've got UN data on this. It's very sketchy for other countries. There's a lot of gaps in the data, but this is for the U.S. Percentage of homicides attributable to a firearm in the U.S. is roughly 2/3. It stayed steady over the last several years at 2/3, yet as the homicide rate has fallen. But the percentage of homicides attributable to a firearm are staying roughly the same percentage, but those are still crashing. And I'll belabor the point again, dummy, most firearm homicides are not an assault weapon. I mean, you've got a better chance of getting somebody in a large city that's full of crime, you've got a better chance of getting stabbed or have your head stoved in with a hammer or a skillet than you are getting shot with a rifle or a shotgun. So the whole, we need to get them assault weapons, ridiculous. Only idiots come up with that stuff. In 1986, only one state, and that was Vermont, the progressive enclave of Vermont. Only one state in 1986 required no permit to carry a concealed weapon, and 8 states were shall issue. So you've got 41 states. 41 states either may issue, which means if you're not ex-military or ex-police, you probably can't get a concealed carry permit in those 41 states. That was 1986. By 1993, it had fallen to 33 from 41. So now 17 states were either shall issue or no permit required to carry. By 2000, there were 31 states that were required no permit to carry or were shall issue. Only 19 restricted your right, if you're a law-abiding citizen, to carry concealed weapons. By 2010, it had fallen. Only 11 states were may issue or no issue. 39 states either required no permit to carry a concealed weapon or were shall issue, which means like Iowa was one of the later states to join the game. If you have no criminal record whatsoever, you can easily get a concealed carry permit. I could if I wanted. I could get a concealed carry permit. I do not have one. I don't need to see the need for me to get one, but I could get one very easily. And as you know, what recently happened in Illinois, there are no states that are may issue or no issue for concealed carry permits. So that closes that section. What we're going to go over next is the number of guns estimated from several sources, and I will concentrate on the U.S. first and then go to several other countries, see how the number of firearms in this country has spiked massively every single decade for the last 5 or 6. Our next piece of business will deal with the number of guns in the U.S. First of all, Firearms and Violence, a Critical Review, 2004, authors Welford, Pepper, et al. They estimated per capita ownership per 1,000 people, firearms in the U.S., it was 381.3 in 1950, 548.7 in 1970, and by 1999 it was up to 925.8, and there are estimates now that put it at basically almost a gun per man, woman, and child, not quite. Congressional Research Service came up to the conclusion. The National Institute of Justice reported in a national survey that in 1994, 44 million people, approximately 35% of households, owned 192 million firearms, 65 million of which were handguns. And then we get down to, by 2007, the number of firearms had increased to approximately 294 million. 106 million handguns, 105 million rifles, and 83 million shotguns in the U.S. Per capita, the civilian gun stock has roughly doubled since 1968, from 1 gun per every 2 persons to 1 gun per person, and there are other studies that disagree with this. For example, the small arms survey, I will get to it. This will be something I will be going over later as well and relate to other countries and their data. And again, I have a lot of data to go over. This is not something you can dumb down in 5 minutes like most of these guys do. Small arms survey, and again, I have all my links. I have all my links underneath. You can check this out. They averaged not even their high rate, high firearms per 100 people in the U.S. only comes out at 95.3. That was this was back in 2007. It may be a gun per man, woman, and child now. Low estimate was 82.2. And I'll go over some of their methodology, but they pegged the U.S. rate at 88.8 firearms per 100 people. Nobody's denying that it's increased massively since the 60s. So you got to consider that data. So it's clear that the number of civilians owning guns and the number of guns each average gun owner owns, has spiked massively in the United States over the last 50 years. That is undeniable. And if you look at the crime stats I went over earlier, if you believe correlation equals causation, you can't conclude that more guns equals more violent crime and more homicide. Unless you're an idiot like OtherDude. And we'll cut that off right here. For the rest of this, see the OtherDudeProductions Refutation Station Part 2, where I will continue debunking him on gun control.